Aum Sairam. Hara Hara Shankara, Jaya Jaya Shankara. Episode 7. Shri Mahaswami-The Sage with Eyes of Light. The Diary of a Seeker of Truth. Dr.Serge Demetrian. Dear devotees, now we shall listen to the first part of this divine book under the subtitle Dawn, first chapter, first encounter. First part. Majestic like a mountain rises the splendor of the sin-destroying Guru who holds royal court in the devotee's heart of love. Ineffable is this mounting bliss. Sri Muruganar. The Garland of Guru's Sayings, verse 325. Dawn. The first encounter. Bucharest, Romania, winter 1955. It had snowed abundantly that morning and the weather remained cloudy. Late in the afternoon, I was walking along a boulevard in the center, surrounded by a flock of shivering pedestrians snugly wrapped up in their dark coats, when my attention was drawn to a group standing in front of a poster advertising an exhibition in a neighboring hall. Over their heads, wearing fur caps, I could read India Through Paintings, an art collection of Indian paintings by true Indians, apparently an event not to miss in the cultural ghetto where my country lay in those years. I had 2 hours at my disposal before the closing time. I entered without hesitation, abandoning at the entrance the heavy coat and winter boots. A dazzling sight of forms and colors welcomed me inside. Mountains piercing the clouds far above, Hindu temples, large rivers, old areas of towns, villages, immense forests swarming with tropical animals, jade green rice fields in which were nonchalantly strolling white storks that had prudently fled the winter storms from Romania. Hermitages, the sea, and moreover men, women, children clad in thin, light clothes, drowned in sunlight and breathing a calm joy of life. Everywhere I came across fragments of India gleaned from my reading. Where to stop when each painting was calling me? There, in front of the grandiose peaks of the Himalaya, here in front of the peaceful hill of Arunachala in South India, where a large carpet of yellow flowers spread at its feet. Nearby, I felt drawn by the rounded cone-like towers of the North Indian temples and by the multi-storied ones of South Indian temples, where thronged the sculptures of the entire creation painted in bright colors. And spread all over in the halls of the exhibition, a concourse of deities with almond-shaped eyes and straight noses, smiling or thoughtful, serious-minded or dreaming, sitting or walking, playing or dancing to rhythms nearby, with hieratic movements where the slightest gesture of a subtly codified art is full of significance. They seem to have come down from their sanctuaries to take rest for a time in the frames which seemingly had become larger in trying to contain them. Where to stop then? Which shall I take with me? The time was running short. I had to decide quickly. I paused to think and came back to the one that had impressed me most. It displayed broad daylight in an austere scene of yellowish mountains bereft of vegetation. On a rocky area, a dignified figure clad in a simple orange robe was sitting under the shade of a hut. At his left side reposed a long stick with a small flag of the same orange cloth tied at its upper end at his right side of a wooden black vessel. Before him, at some distance, lay a middle-aged man, bare-chested, with abdomen, forehead and stretched arms on the ground in an attitude of submissive confidence towards the feet of the sitting person, who, by the acceptance of this prostration, seemed to express the granting of his protection. I read repeatedly the title, The Blessing of the Saint, on the explanatory board adjacent to the display. There was no doubt the picture showed a seeker of a deeper meaning of life in the form of the prostrated person who had finally met his master, his guide, and had humbly entrusted himself to the one who henceforth will lead and protect him. I remained alone, gazing pensively at this painting without paying heed to the closing bell until a god reminded me that I had to quit the exhibition. I left with wet eyes. Outside, swallowed up by the cold and the now falling night, I joined the file of the passers-by who thronged their way through the snow under the pale light of the street lamps. I was one among thousands, but nobody could have guessed the hope hidden in my heart. This was at a time in my country when one was on guard not to reveal too much to others of how one really thought or felt. That evening, as if by chance, the path opened towards the east, towards India. My mind remained focused on this revelation in the days that followed. It continued on numerous days and nights for years to come, as if preparing itself for an encounter, the great encounter. 13 years later, in India. Sunday, August 15th, 1968, Shri Krishna Jayanti Day. In the train from Madras to Hyderabad. Shri Krishna Jayanti is one of the most beloved holidays in India. It is celebrated in all sections of the society from most ancient times, as Krishna is considered to be the savior of humanity. He saves humanity from suffering by the way of love. Across the great span of the cultural history of India, the testimonies of those who worship him are countless. Nevertheless, Krishna saves also through wisdom, as he is of the same nature as Vyasa, the great sage, who was highly esteemed by the monastic order of the person I was going to meet. Therefore, Shri Krishna Jayanti is a day any faithful Hindu would consider very auspicious for an undertaking like mine, partly by conviction, partly being caught up like a contagion in the joyous atmosphere. I was tempted to accept this point of view. I must confess that I am sensitive to these kinds of coincidences. With these rather encouraging thoughts, I boarded in the evening of that day at the Madras railway station, the night train that was to take me to Hyderabad the following morning. The hard berth of the first-class compartment was not conducive to sleep. I had time to think about my position. I felt I was heading towards one of those momentous encounters in life when the road can take an unexpected turn of the sort that destiny has so far concealed from us. I was to meet and see with my eyes a true sage. I was sharpening my critical faculties as I was in no mood to be misled. My Indian friends had told me only good things about this person and lauded his innumerable qualities. It was as if even his opponents, he should have had some, were compelled to accept him and were obliged to remain silent or to disappear. The souvenir of the blessing of the saint, that message in the form of a painting, I had admired more than 13 years before in that definitive winter in Europe, sprang into my mind. Am I being led to him now? The possibility to meet someone who is able to reply by his presence and by his word to the important questions of life was fascinating to me. I thought that this person had to testify and convince me by living up his own convictions, and he should be able to teach those capable of following him. I had often grown enthusiastic at the descriptions of some exceptional individuals, but it makes quite a difference to assess for oneself the living reality. The aspiration to find out a deeper meaning of life, or better, the meaning of life, has been with me almost as long as the numerous years of my existence. It came to be during my younger years, and inspired by all the researchers I had come across in the course of my readings, that I was meant to be brought to the very person to whom I was now approaching, the old Shankaracharya of Kanchipuram. Firstly, it was the account of another dogged researcher at the end of the third decade of the past century. It was in 1940, after the beginning of the Second World War, that I read this book with all the enthusiasm of my then 17 years. And it was only the war which stopped me from immediately leaving Europe for India. For many years I bore in mind the image of that wandering monk who had come from a long gone time and had passed barefooted through the villages of India, demonstrating his faith by words or just by his holy presence. However, in the meantime, I had forgotten him due to all the normal exigencies of life. There was his image on one or two photos that I had found sometime during the years 1964 or 1965. But these two disappeared soon from my memory. Yet, it so happened that an Indian magazine with an article on him fell in my hand a few months before my departure to India. He was still there, my old sage. Thus, as soon as I reached Madras, I asked my new Indian friends about him. I was told he was the well-known Sri Mahaswami or Senior Swami or Sri Chandrasekharendra Saraswati, who was by that time the most photographed person in South India. I was also told that he had just, after more than 60 years of having been in charge of the mutt, relinquished the administrative burden to his successor, the junior Swami. Nevertheless, faithful to the task assigned to the monks of his order, he continued to travel all over India in the same way as before. My Indian friends stressed that he is the only one still left living like this, perhaps the last one. If you want to understand how Adi Shankara could have looked, you must see the Mahaswami from Kanchipuram. He is the last representative of a spiritual, religious and philosophical tradition of thousands of years in India. His life habits were the simplest possible regarding food, clothing and dwelling. I learned, for instance, in addition to being strictly vegetarian, he would only take parched rice, greens, milk, fruits, and the days in the year when he fasted were more frequent than those when he used to eat. That he walked barefooted when not wearing the traditional hard wooden sandals, that is padukas, on appropriate occasions. His daily program included 2 long pujas in the morning and in the afternoon, frequent periods of meditation, reception of visitors, reading, and work with traditional scholars, and all these while still participating in the administration of the mutt. I had been told that Sri Mahaswami knew several Indian languages, that he read English fluently, although he spoke it rarely in public, and had some knowledge of the French language. He was well respected for the purity of his austere habits, for the energy he showed in sustaining and encouraging the Hindu religious tradition, for the excellence of his philosophical speech, for the tolerance towards the numerous Indian religions, for the modesty that allowed him to receive without any trace of vanity the honors of the great ones, and his generosity in bestowing his blessings upon anybody who was earnestly seeking them while not asking anything in return, for his availability during extended public meetings, darshan. He was considered to be a Jagat Guru, a master of wisdom for the entire world, that is, someone who, having himself realized the truth, was able to testify to it and was qualified to lead worthy seekers towards the supreme aim. On this aspect of his visible action, in which I was most interested, I remembered how Sri Mahaswami directed Paul Brunton towards another great sage when he had asked for his protection and guidance. Mulling over all this on the train, I was anxious to see how a representative example of all that was more traditional in the religious and philosophical culture of Hinduism would receive a seeker who came from the other end of the world. As I did not find a convincing answer to this doubt, I left the matter to the Mahaswami, for in his long life he would have met identical or similar cases. To confess our inability to solve a problem sometimes brings up the solution we are searching for, on the sole condition that one entrusted the responsibility to a competent person. Thinking that, I went to sleep peacefully. Devotees, let us close this episode and shall continue to listen to the first encounter of dawn in the coming episode, bowing at the holy feet of the Gurus. Aum Sairam. Hara Hara Shankara, Jaya Jaya Shankara.